When I bought the lakefront cottage on Willow Ridge Lane, I envisioned quiet mornings on the porch, steaming coffee in hand, and the sound of birdsong drifting over the water. I was coming off 2 years of turbulence. My father's passing, the sale of our family farm, and a bitter divorce that left me disillusioned with city life. Willow Ridge, with its trimmed hedges and cobblestone sidewalks, seemed like the kind of place that promised peace. That illusion lasted 72 hours. Her name was Karen Holbrook, and she ran the Homeowners Association with a level of control that would make a dictator blush. She approached me during my first morning jog, a woman in her late 50s with perfectly styled silver hair, wraparound sunglasses, and a clipboard clasped like a weapon. "I'm Karen," she said briskly, falling into step beside me without invitation. "I chair the HOA. I hope you're settling in. I noticed your trash bins are green." "That won't do." I blinked, breathless from my jog. "Sorry. HOA guidelines specify grey bins only. Aesthetic cohesion." She said it like a mantra. "I'll make a note," I replied, more stunned than offended. She stopped walking. "Also, your curtains in the guest room are visible from the street. Patterned fabrics aren't permitted on front-facing windows. It disrupts the visual harmony." I tried to laugh. She didn't. Instead, she handed me a printed citation and walked away. I told myself it was a minor inconvenience. Every neighborhood had its quirks, but it wasn't long before I realized Karen wasn't enforcing rules. She was building a kingdom. My neighbor, Dev, warned me a few days later. "She fined me for leaving my car window cracked," he said, voice low, claimed. "It posed a security risk. She's relentless," I nodded, already feeling the pressure. But I wasn't about to let anyone bully me out of my new home. The real trouble began the day I returned from Costco with a trunk full of bulk groceries, cases of water, canned goods, a 25-pound sack of basmati rice, and several oversized containers of laundry detergent. I popped the trunk, humming to myself, and began unloading. Karen appeared like a specter, crossing the street with mechanical precision. "You can't do that," she snapped. "Do what?" I asked, balancing a box of cereal and a gallon of olive oil. "Bulk unloading. It violates community visual standards and creates clutter. Not to mention it invites pests." I just got back from the store. "I'm unloading groceries, not building a bunker." Karen's lips tightened into a line. "If you need that much food, perhaps you should consider private storage or donate to a food pantry. Excess attracts suspicion." Suspicion over groceries. I placed the cereal box deliberately on my porch. "I think I'll continue bringing food into my house." She stared at me like I'd just set the place on fire. That evening, a citation was taped to my door. Violation 4.6.3. Disorderly appearance due to mass consumption goods. Fine $150. It was surreal. I took it to the HOA board the following day. 3 members sat at a long table in the community hall. 2 of them barely looked up from their phones. Karen presided over the center like a judge in a courtroom. "I'd like to dispute this fine," I said, holding up the notice. I was unloading groceries for myself, from my car, onto my porch. Karen's expression was stone. "It's not about what you were doing. It's about what it looked like. Our standards are clear. Public-facing clutter damages neighborhood value." The other board members nodded, uninterested in the nuance. My protest dissolved into silence. I left with more than a fine. I left with a target on my back. From that day forward, Karen watched me like a hawk. If I brought in more than 2 grocery bags, I'd find another notice. If a package sat on my porch for more than 10 minutes, another citation arrived. It was as if my driveway had become a war zone, and every bag of rice was a threat to her empire. At first, I ignored it. Then I noticed something strange. A box of protein powder vanished. A week later, a case of sparkling water. I thought I was misplacing things, until I saw the security footage. Karen, on my porch, at night, taking them. She wasn't just issuing fines. She was helping herself, and I wasn't about to let that continue. The camera footage was grainy, but undeniable. Karen, her silhouette unmistakable, even under the cloak of night, stepped lightly onto my porch, her sneakers silent on the wooden planks. She moved with practiced ease, bypassing the motion sensor light I'd foolishly left turned off. Then she bent down, grabbed a box of granola bars and a shrink-wrapped flat of bottled water, and walked away into the dark, cradling them like prizes. My stomach turned. I played the video 3 times, each repetition confirming the same grotesque truth. The head of the HOA was stealing my groceries, not fining me, not reprimanding me, stealing. The next morning, I printed screenshots and slid them into a manila folder. I walked across the street to her house, a sterile beige monstrosity with 2 potted topiaries trimmed into perfect spheres, and knocked. Karen answered, perfectly composed in a collared sweater and pearls, as if she were expecting royalty. "We need to talk," I said, holding up the folder. Her eyes flicked to it. "If it's about the latest notice, I suggest you direct complaints to the board secretary. You're stealing from me." The words hit like a thrown brick. "I have you on video, Karen. You walked onto my porch. You took my groceries. You've been doing it for weeks." For a split second, something shifted behind her eyes. Fear, anger. Then it was gone. She folded her arms. "That's a serious accusation. And trespassing onto my property to confront me unannounced, that's your violation." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "You're gaslighting me." "I'm protecting the community," she snapped. "Your excessive hoarding invites pests, encourages unsafe storage practices, and distorts the uniform appearance of our neighborhood. If those items were unattended on your porch, I had every right. They weren't unattended. I live there." She stepped back and slammed the door in my face. I spent the rest of the day debating whether to go to the police. But before I could decide, they came to me. 2 officers, uniforms pressed, and expressions polite but wary, pulled into my driveway that afternoon. "Are you Ms. Lane?" the taller one asked. "We received a call about suspicious behavior and possible illegal food storage." "Illegal? What?" I blinked. "Your HOA chair reported concerns about black market activity," the second officer said, almost apologetically. "We're obligated to follow up." I let them in. They looked around, clearly uncomfortable, poking into cabinets and the pantry. All they found were shelves stocked like any suburban household. Rice, canned soup, pasta, bulk detergent, and enough granola bars to survive a winter storm. She said, "I'm hoarding." I asked. Her report was vague. "Honestly, this seems like a misuse of law enforcement," the taller officer muttered, closing a cupboard. "But these HOA folks, especially in upscale communities, sometimes think their rules trump common sense." Off the record, his partner added, glancing at the door, "You're not the first. She called us last month because someone had a stack of firewood too close to their shed. Said it was a firebomb waiting to happen." I laughed bitterly. "So I'm not crazy." "No," he said. "But you might want to install better lighting." That night, another citation appeared on my door. Violation 5.1.2. Improper interaction with HOA officials and law enforcement. Fine, $200. I didn't pay it. Instead, I started talking to my neighbors, Rena and Dev, 3 doors down, invited me in the moment I knocked. Rena poured tea while Dev leaned against the counter, arms folded. She stole our packages, Rena said. We caught her snooping in our recycling bin too. When we confronted her, she claimed she was investigating mislabeling violations. We filed a complaint. Nothing happened. She is the board, Dev added. No one will challenge her. People are too scared. Or too tired. I have video, I said. Clear as day. They both straightened. Send it to us, Dev said. If you're ready to fight back, we'll help. Something shifted then. I wasn't alone anymore. Over the next few days, I shared the footage with more residents. Quiet conversations turned into quiet outrage. One woman whispered that Karen fined her for hosting her granddaughter's birthday party without event pre-approval. Another had been forced to remove wind chimes for oral disharmony. The stories piled up like kindling. All they needed was a spark, and now they had one. Karen wasn't just abusing power. She was stealing, silencing, manipulating, and for the first time, her kingdom had cracks. We called it the Pantry Rebellion. It began with a group chat, neighbors who'd had enough of Karen's reign. We kept it off HOA-monitored platforms. Dev created a private signal thread. Rena compiled incident reports. I uploaded the footage of Karen's porch raids and marked the timestamps. Sunlight is disinfectant, Dev had said. Let's shine some. Within days, we had over 20 members. Silent homeowners, retirees, young couples, single parents, shared stories that blurred the line between absurdity and abuse. One woman, Gwen, revealed that Karen fined her $300 for hanging a quilt on her porch railing after her son's funeral. She said it was emotional clutter, Gwen whispered, voice trembling. Like grief was a landscaping issue. That was the moment it changed for me. This wasn't just petty tyranny. It was cruelty, systemic and dressed in beige. Decided to hold an emergency HOA meeting. Per the bylaws, if more than 30% of residents submitted written requests, the board was obligated to convene. Dev collected signatures. Rena drafted the request, and I sent it via certified mail. One copy to the board, one posted publicly at the community entrance. Karen couldn't ignore it. The meeting was scheduled for Friday evening. Word spread fast. People who hadn't attended a board meeting in years planned to show. Lawn chairs were dragged into garages. Copies of citations were printed and paper-clipped to manila folders like court documents. It felt like a trial was coming, and Karen was the defendant. But she wasn't about to give up control quietly. On Thursday, a new wave of citations dropped like confetti across the neighborhood. I received 2, one for excessive sidewalk interaction with multiple households, and another for inciting anti-governance sentiment. The fine, $400 combined. Rena found a note slipped under her door, unsigned. Be careful who you align with. Not everyone survives in this neighborhood. But the more Karen tried to intimidate, the stronger the resistance grew. On the night of the meeting, the community hall was packed, standing room only. Rows of folding chairs filled with once silent neighbors, now armed with stories, receipts, and purpose. Karen sat at the center of the board table, flanked by 2 bored-looking trustees and a stack of neatly labeled binders. She wore her signature sweater and pearls, lips pressed into a taut smile, but I noticed her fingers tapping nervously against her clipboard. The meeting opened with her usual procedural coldness. We'll begin with old business then. No, I said, standing. We're starting with item 1 on the emergency. Petition. The crowd murmured in agreement. Karen's eyes narrowed. This meeting is under the authority of the HOA board, she said icily. You do not have the floor. Actually, Dev cut in, rising beside me. Section 8B of the Willow Ridge Charter states that emergency agenda items override standard procedures. If properly petitioned, Rena held up the printed bylaws. We followed every rule. Karen looked to her trustees. They wouldn't meet her eyes. The room waited. She relented, jaw clenched. Fine, you have 5 minutes. I plugged a flash drive into the projector. The footage flickered to life. Grainy video of Karen, mid-theft, holing, boxes of bottled water off my porch like a raccoon in a polo shirt. Gasps rippled across the room. Then came the screenshots, the timestamps, the matching HOA fine dates. Dev had even cross-referenced them against HOA camera footage. It was airtight. Karen blanched. That's doctored. It's fake. It's an attack. Rena stood up. Then explained the footage from my porch, she said, cueing the next clip. Karen reaching into a clearly addressed Amazon box and removing a wireless speaker. Gwen added her voice. Explain why you fined me for my son's funeral quilt. The room exploded. Voices rose. Papers flew. People demanded to speak. Demanded audits. Demanded resignations. Karen tried to gavel the room into silence, but it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a teaspoon. You're out of control, one man shouted. You've abused us for years, said another. I moved to remove Karen Halbrook as HOA chair, effective immediately, I said, loud and clear. A beat of silence, then, in a chorus, seconded. Thirded, all in favor, Dev asked. Hands shot up. Karen stood, furious. This is mutiny. No, I said, meeting her gaze. This is democracy. The vote passed. Karen stormed out, binder in hand, her kingdom collapsing behind her. But we weren't finished. Not yet. Karen's house went dark the night she was removed. Porch lights off, shutters closed, flags taken down. For the first time in years, her surveillance cameras blinked red, disconnected. The queen of order and optics had vanished behind a fortress of silence. But the neighborhood didn't go back to sleep. Dev, now interim chair, called for a forensic audit of the HOA's finances. Rena and I joined the newly formed ethics committee. Within 2 weeks, we unearthed a trail of financial manipulation so blatant, it was almost comical. Inflated citations for non-compliance, unauthorized vendor payments, and purchases of luxury office supplies, $900 worth of custom monogrammed pens, and emergency catered luncheons charged to the HOA reserve. That explains the $75 late fee for my mailbox repainting. One neighbor muttered. The paint wasn't even dry before she wrote it up. Worse still, we found that Karen had been using HOA discretionary funds to issue community maintenance grants to herself. Her property had been power washed, roof resealed, and her flower beds professionally landscaped, all approved under vague maintenance categories, and rubber stamped by the passive board members she'd silenced into submission. The board voted, unanimously, to refer the findings to the County Ethics Board. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about accountability. Still, watching her subpoena notice arrive via certified mail felt satisfying. I could have ended it there, but I didn't. I organized the first true neighborhood potluck in 5 years. No forms, no approvals, no fees. Just folding tables on the cul-de-sac, paper lanterns, and people. Gwen brought homemade pecan pie. Dev's wife, Kelsey, made lamb kebabs. I contributed a massive casserole and coolers of bottled water. Label facing forward, just to twist. The knife. Karen didn't show, of course, but her house was within view, and I saw her watching from behind her blinds, and I smiled. Weeks passed. The HOA meetings grew civil, even warm. We redrafted the bylaws to include resident oversight and sunset clauses for enforcement. Petty fines were refunded, banned regulations were repealed, and the HOA was no longer a weapon, but a shared tool, finally reflecting the people it was meant to serve. It was Rena who noticed it first. Karen's property had gone up for sale. The sign appeared quietly on a Thursday morning. For sale by owner. Price negotiable. The irony was thick. No one wanted to buy it. Not after the scandal. Not in a neighborhood where she'd weaponized neighborliness and turned block parties into tribunals. The silence she'd once demanded now suffocated her. Still, I didn't celebrate. Not until the grocery truck arrived, a local mutual aid group I volunteered with had begun weekend deliveries to families facing food insecurity. I arranged for them to set up a donation pickup in the neighborhood. A gentle full-circle moment. Boxes of granola bars, flats of water, bags of pasta. Community giving, not forced sharing. As the volunteers unloaded crates, a hush fell across the street. Karen stood on her porch. She looked different. Thinner, tired. Her signature pearls were gone. She stepped forward, then hesitated, as if unsure what part she still played in this story. Then she turned, retreated inside, and closed the door. I watched her vanish without a word. No police were called. No fines were issued. No groceries were stolen. That was the real ending. Not the vote, not the audit. Not even the shame. The true resolution was this: silence, no longer from fear, but from peace. Weeks later, the house sold to a young couple expecting twins. They introduced themselves with smiles and peach cobbler. They asked about schools, trash days, and community events, not bylaws. The neighbors responded in kind. It was like oxygen had returned. As for me, I kept my porch light on and my grocery orders frequent. Karen had taught me that tyranny doesn't always come loud. It can arrive in polite packages and pastel sweaters, but resistance. Resistance begins with a single question spoken out loud. Is this normal? And courage answers, no, and it doesn't have.